Hi, welcome to SBR Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. We are previewing the main card of UFC 189. Right now, we are talking with Nick Kalikas from MMAOddsBreaker.com and also joining us over the phone, also with MMAOddsBreaker.com, MMA analyst Brian Hemminger. All right, Rory MacDonald and Robbie Lawler. You know, the Conor McGregor fight's getting all the hype, but this is going to be an interesting matchup. It's a rematch, of course. Right now, MacDonald is minus 190 at 5 dimes. Lawler on the other side at plus 165, despite the fact that, Lawler did get a narrow decision in the first fight. The question is just, who's improved more since that fight? Both these guys have looked really good. MacDonald has kind of got that calculating style. Maybe he's really coming into his own here, which would justify the line. But Lawler is no slouch, and this line is getting up there, plus 165. Brian Hemminger, do you think these odds should be closer to Pick'em?
I do think they should be a little closer. I mean, Rory is an incredible fighter. He's always had a lot of support from the betting public, and Robbie has actually most of the time been on the receiving end of some very bad support. I mean, he was an underdog, and I think his first 3 UFC fights in his return. So it makes sense, but again, I think the line is getting a little out of control just because Robbie did win that first fight. So
sure,
and he's the champ. So yeah, usually you never see a champion this big of an underdog.
I know, but maybe that's telling then. Maybe that's because, Lawler had the great comeback. Everyone loved it. The fans were going nuts. And here's where it ends, though. Now it's time for Lawler to bow out, Rory MacDonald to come into his own, and maybe that minus 190 line in retrospect will seem justified and even maybe a little bit low. You don't see it that way, though?
I do think that Rory will probably win, but I do think the line is a little bit over the top here. Maybe Rory should be about minus 150 right now.
Nick Kalikas, where did you open this line? I'm curious.
There's been some significant movement. It's been out for a long time. So I opened it minus 140 for MacDonald, and it skyrocketed up. It was up over 2 to 1. I think it was like it reached a high point maybe around 2.5 to 1, believe it or not. You could have got Lawler plus 190, plus 200, close to that range at least. So that's what the crazy thing is. Now it's starting to come back down to reality. But I was surprised how much movement came in, or how much action and how much movement there was early on in this fight, because it is tough, like Brian just said. I mean, Robbie won the first fight, and by the way, I mean, I took a big part of that plus money. It was a huge number the first time, and I loved it. I was all in Robbie Lawler there,
right,
and it paid dividends. It was a close fight, don't get me wrong, but he definitely deserved to get that nod, and he fought really well. And just the disrespect on Robbie Lawler just continues. It's amazing.
Sure.
I mean, the guy, he kind of reinvented himself, on his second UFC run, and it happened before he made the UFC. I think, by first of all coming into the UFC as a welterweight again was awesome for him because, you could tell he's taking everything a little bit more serious. He's training better mentally, physically. Every part of his fight game, has gotten better, really. So, I mean, through the years, he finally kind of hit that spot where he's mature and he has the talent that he can go places, and he did it. I mean, hard work is what got him the strap, honestly.
Sure.
But the fans just have not respected him at the betting window at all. So that's what a little bit of the frustrating thing is. So I thought 140 is a fair line. I'm opening the champion that has a win over him as the underdog, and it just skyrocketed up. But as Brian said, I kind of do lean a little bit more towards Rory here because, I mean, the guy has looked fantastic too. I know he had some spots where he wasn't aggressive enough and he was a little bit lackluster in his performances, but the last couple fights, he's proven to be better. I mean, a little bit more aggressive. He's fighting smarter. And the guy really is a total package.
Yeah.
I mean, he has it all. I mean, he's got the striking. He's got the length. He's got the wrestling. He's got a submission game to go along with it. He's got good sub-D. The only questionable spots, I think, with Rory MacDonald are his cardio at times, which seems to be getting a little bit better, to be honest with you. I mean, if you look back at the early part of his UFC career till now, I think cardio has definitely improved. But also, he has been rocked. He's been chin checked before too, and so I don't know if I trust his chin all the way. He's a pretty tough guy, and he's managed to fight through, but he does get tagged. I mean, defensively, he leaves enough openings where a guy like Lawler could take advantage, and he did in that first fight.
Yeah.
So that's the concern there with Rory MacDonald in betting him and laying juice against a guy like Robbie Lawler.
Well, I'm not surprised that you got such big action both ways and all that movement, because you can make such a strong case for both these guys. So it sounds like then the books are going to be taking a lot of action and that it's going to wind up being mostly balanced.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, early on, again, the limits are a little bit smaller, so that climb to up over 200,
right,
compared to the amount of action they're actually getting now with bigger limits is different. Yeah, so it will be fairly even, I think. If anything, we're probably still going to need Robbie Lawler over slightly, and at the price right now, I mean, it's really a dog or pass situation. But I do, as far as a pick goes, I think that it's time for Rory to step in and fill the shoes of GSP, which everybody expected. I do think it's a good spot for him, and I do think he can win this fight. But at the price, I wouldn't be willing to lay that juice. I mean, it's just
all right. So let's go back to Brian Hemminger. It sounds like maybe the best way to bet this fight is not then just on one of the lines. You don't want to bet against Rory MacDonald and don't want to bet against Lawler at these odds, but maybe there's a prop or the total that might have better value right now. It's a 5-round fight. The over 3.5 right now at 5 dimes is -185. This is MacDonald's first title fight. He has gone 5. He has fought in 5-round fights before, though. The under 3.5 +160. Brian Hemminger, is there a prop or total that you think might actually have a better betting value than having to take MacDonald or Lawler here?
The total's a bit scary because, the last fight went the distance, but Robbie did drop Rory in the 3rd round. So there was a big threat of a finish there, and Rory started finishing people. He had a really impressive knockout of Tarek Saffiedine in his last fight. So, Robbie's 2 title fights have gone the distance. So, people might be thinking, he went the distance with Rory, he went the distance twice with Hendricks. This could go the distance, but it's not that easy because, things happen in MMA that are crazy all the time. So I'm probably just going to avoid that total at all costs. And in terms of props, maybe the fight goes to a decision prop would be better than the over. You might be able to get that at least better odds than 3.5, just because so many fights have gone the distance. But again, it's scary doing any props with this fight because, especially with Robbie, I mean, he's probably not going to submit Rory, so you can throw that out of the equation. But other than that, all the other 5 options of knockout for both guys, submission for Rory, and then decision winner for either guy could be available. So it kind of is a bit tricky to go for any of those options.
All right, Nick Kalikas, for someone thinking about the total here, what's the argument against the under? 3.5, that's a lot of rounds. And if you take the under, you're getting +160. That's a big underdog line there. What's the argument against taking under 3.5 at +160?
Well, I think Brian just mentioned a few things. It's really tough to say because, I mean, Robbie has been going. I mean, look at his fight against Matt Brown, too. I mean, you got 2 guys that are willing to stand and bang and just dish out the punishment. And Robbie's tough. I mean, he withstands punishment throughout. I mean, he's been getting tagged probably a little bit more than you'd like to see recently as well. He's been in some wars, so I don't know if that's going to eventually have a toll, especially as he's getting older. Because even though he's not an old fighter, he still has the fight years, and in fight years he is actually much older than what he appears. So that's a little scary. Maybe his chin finally gives up. I mean, Rory does have a little bit underrated knockout power. I mean, like Brian mentioned, he's finished Saffiedine recently too. So, I mean, that could be a little bit of a scare. Or Robbie with one punch can end it, anybody's night in the whole weight class. So that's the other thing you got to consider too, especially with Rory's chin. I think, he's hittable, and he has been rocked in fights before too. So I think that is a big concern, and it makes it a little bit tough because I could see this fight hitting the scorecards, maybe being a 3 rounds to 2 type of fight, with one guy kind of edging it out a little bit. But at the same time, if it ends by either guy by knockout early, if it ends in round 2 possibly, for example, if Robbie catches him or Rory catches him, I wouldn't be that shocked. Or on the ground, I mean, Robbie's takedown defense is obviously pretty good, but in a scramble or, in one mistake, I think Rory could sub him. I mean, his sub defense through the years has been very questionable. It's been okay. It's been improving, and he's hard, again, to control on the ground. But once you do get him there, if you actually are aggressive and go for subs, it's possible to get him out of there. So those are the concerns, I think, with the total.
So it sounds like this might be not a dog or pass fight, but just a watch and pass fight. It's going to be a great fight. Maybe not much clear betting value to be had. Brian Hemminger, if I had to pin you down, though, on one bet, if you had to make one bet on this fight, what would it be?
If I had to do anything, I might put Rory MacDonald in a parlay just because I do think he could win. But again, this is probably a watch and pass for me. I'm probably not going to bet it.
Nick Kalikas, if you had to make a bet, you get one free bet, put it on whatever you want, what would you do with it?
At the current price, I think it's all about price for this fight. At the current price, I'd probably stick it on Robbie because I think he is getting a little bit too much disrespect. So just put it on the underdog there, but it depends. I mean, if the line significantly dropped, then I would go the other way. So it's all about price shopping for this fight because it is that tough.
Okay, sounds good, guys. Thanks.